You want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Um, well, I my academic training is physics, and I have a PhD in experimental physics from NYU, and um, taught physics for over 4 decades, both on the high school and college levels. And then I got into Tai Chi at a certain point around I think it was April 1970, and that started a whole avalanche of my being exposed to various important disciplines, self-development disciplines, such as Taiji, and then meditation and spiritual teachings, etc. And then other martial arts, ninjutsu. I did Aikido a little bit, very small amount, but then I did ninjutsu for quite a while. I did some karate for a few years until my teacher um, decided to teach Taiji, and was with him for quite a while. And I started with Professor Cheng in Chinatown, New York City.
How did you meet Professor Chang?
the I met I was at NYU teaching at the time, and I met this a girl who knew me from our childhood, and we talked. And she was an artist, and she invited me for dinner. And she said to me, "You are so stiff and so um, rigid. You should study. I'm studying calligraphy with this old man in Chinatown. You should you should study with him. He's teaching something called Taiji, and you should go there, especially since you're so interested in exercise, which I was. I was doing a lot of calisthenics and building myself up and making myself strong, but it didn't get to the fact that I was totally uncoordinated.
Right, which
And
doesn't make a lot of sense with your background in martial arts.
well, that came afterwards. All of
Oh, I
that
see.
came afterwards. I had no training in martial arts at that point.
So you were just exercising and doing fitness.
Yeah, I was doing, which was the thing in those days, physical fitness and calisthenics. And there was a Royal Canadian Air Force exercise program that I did, and felt very virtuous doing so. And whereas I probably may have been better off just sitting under a tree reading a book, that might have done me more good. No, it was good to build up some strength, and I wish I had more of it now. And so I went there, and I saw these people doing this weird thing that I didn't understand at all. And I figured, well, if they had a 10-pound weight in each hand and they were doing it twice as fast, then maybe there would be some value to this. And I knew I wasn't going to do that. But the class ended, and I was just watching. I hadn't participated. And then there was another class, which was a sword class, and there was a student who was quite overweight, Stanley Israel, who I had looked at him, and in those days, very few people were overweight. It's not like now. And I looked at him and I said, "Well, how could this be for health and with students like that?" And then he there was a sword class, and he was started to do movement, and he was just sort of flying around the room, and his movement was so amazing. And I said, well, if anybody can move that fast, maybe there is something to this. If anybody can move with that kind of coordination. So I signed up for 3 months of classes, which was a big thing for me, a big monetary investment too. It was $51 in those days. That was a lot of money for me. And after the first class, I realized this is what will solve my problem of not being coordinated. I knew I wasn't, and I didn't know how to help that. And so at this point, I feel that when I started, I was much less coordinated than anybody I've ever seen, and now I feel I'm much more coordinated than most people. So I achieved my goal, but it led to so many other things.
And Professor Chang was teaching this class?
He would, it was mostly his senior students, and he would come out every now and then and do a few movements, lead a few movements, and then he would say rest, and he'd walk out and go back to his office. And it was only in the last year that I was there, which was about 5 years after I started, that he really started to teach a lot of things, and personally, and he was totally the teacher. But at the beginning, he was sort of peripheral. But I remember when he showed the first move, I watched him, and his foot went out as he stepped to the left, and I didn't even see it go out. And I said to myself, how did he get that foot out? And I realized this is an amazing thing. This is amazing. Um, and I started to see the skill level that he had, and which inspired me. And I've been I've been doing his form ever since. I've learned the long form and you know, other forms that he didn't teach, but a staff form and a broadsword form. He taught the sword form and a two-person form. So, but basically his classes were mainly push hands and tie and the empty hand form, short form.
Yeah. So he really did have a he really was masterful in his movements.
Yes, yeah, very very amazing to watch, and the but then you know after I was there for 5 years, he died, and he went to Taiwan and he died, and the school sort of tried to get along, and at that point, by then I was teaching and I taught at the school after he, you know, under the senior students at the time, and then I decided to find other teachers. A lot of my classmates didn't, and they just wanted to um, keep studying what they learned from Cheng Man-ch'ing. And it's hard to study with somebody after they're dead. It's hard to do it. It's limited. It's
Yeah.
limited.
Yeah.
So I've had a succession of teachers after that.
Um, Before we move on, did you, this is maybe a strange question, but did any of his students rise to his level, or do you think any of them were able to like grasp what he was teaching and take it out and share it?
To my knowledge, nobody in the United States
Hmm.
got the teaching, but there were people. He had 10 disciples, I'm told,
Mhm.
who did. And so the question is, why
Yeah.
did they get it and we didn't? And the some people said, well, he wasn't going to teach Americans, but I think he wanted to, and he started teaching a lot at the very beginning. But then when he saw the flourish, this is my thinking on it. When he saw the interest and the number of people who were coming in who were very serious. I mean,
Yeah.
these people were already very proficient in other arts, in other movement arts, in other martial arts, and they he saw the interest that they had. He realized, I think, at that point that his goal should be to spread Taiji, which is what his teacher Yang Cheng Fu wanted to do, and his teacher's grandfather Yang Lu Chan, who was the originator of the Yang style, wanted to do. Before that, it was secret, but the Yang family wanted to spread Taiji
Mm.
because people in China were sick, and they didn't think of the world, but they thought of China, that
Yeah.
they were sick, they weren't getting good food, and that this would help their health. And so Cheng Man-ch'ing kept that tradition, and I think fulfilled it. Because his style is all over the world, and Taiji is all over the world. And the so he realized that if he made it too complex, that it wouldn't travel as far. You need to have it simple for beginners to get started. And then I think he figured, well, we'd have other teachers after he's gone,
Hmm.
but a lot of them didn't do that.
That makes sense. And then also it seems like, the nuance maybe you'll, like you said, you pick up from other teachers or just from continuing to practice over the years, like it's sort of
Yes.
inherent in the dedication.
But what I see, and I'm going to make some enemies by saying this,
Yeah.
is that I saw this right away. That, remember, this was in the early 70s, late 60s, that people were looking for something, and they were looking for gurus, and they were looking for um, things other than religion. But they turned a lot of these things into religions, and they treated them as religions. And that's what I think happened with Cheng Man-ch'ing's Taiji, that they copied exactly what the teacher did, and they didn't want to countenance anything that was different. Even though Cheng Man-ch'ing, when you read the translations of his writings in Chinese, he was giving out a lot of advanced information, a lot of it. But I don't think many were interested in that or saw the value in it.
What writings are you referring to?
What? Sorry,
Which writings are you referring to?
I didn't get that word. Right? Which
Writing. You said
writings?
he wrote a
Well,
work.
there's one book, Cheng Man-ch'ing's Advanced Form Instructions. I don't
Mhm.
remember the author, and that he spells stuff out very, very clearly, but very succinctly, so that you could miss it.
Mm.
And saying that I'm only going to mention this once, and then he doesn't say it again in the whole book. Or the what is it called? The 13 treatises that he wrote, which was only much more recently translated into English. But the Advanced Form Instructions was, I think, his last book.
All right.
He wrote a number of books in Chinese, including books under pseudonyms.
Mhm. So when you say um, his disciples, he had these certain disciples. Are you talking about some of the ones that did come to America, like Ben Lo or
Yeah.
Chen?
Ben Lo, William C.C. Chen,
Yeah.
Liu,
Mhm.
Dr. Tao.
Mhm.
Um, there were a bunch of them that were they were all Chinese,
Yeah.
and I'm told there are 10. I don't know all 10,
Yeah.
but the ones that I've seen are amazing, just amazing in some of the stuff they can do, and I don't see that in any of um, my classmates or their progeny.
Mm. And you got a chance to study under some of these teachers as well?
Did
You
no?
were, oh, you
Well,
didn't
William Chen,
study
William
under
Chen.
one Chen.
You know,
Now, did he do his own thing, or was it basically a paste and cut? Because I don't think it is, but I'm just asking the question.
right, right. That's a good question. The answer is he was um, I, what I liked about him was he was extremely practical. And he told when I would see him do something differently from the way Professor Cheng did, I would ask him, "Why are you doing it differently?" Because I knew he had learned from Cheng Man-ch'ing, and he said, "I did it that way, the way Cheng Man-ch'ing taught, for 20 years, or some number like that." And then he said, but I realize now that I like this way better. And then I'd ask him, well, which way should I do? Because I was studying with both of them at the same time. And he said, do it both ways, and then you'll find out.
Uh-huh.
And I love that. I love the idea that he was not dogmatic, that
Mhm.
he spoke from his own experience and had thought about things and tried different things. And that's the way I like to be. So the
Right.
teachers I've gotten have been quite individualistic and not just trying to be carbon copies of their teachers.
Yeah. And so is this maybe one of the reasons the Western students, like you said, they kind of made it into a religion? They weren't able to take it and make it into their own thing.
They feel that they have, but I don't see it.
Uh-huh.
I don't see it. And I'm saying these things, and people who did study with Cheng Man-ch'ing or students of Cheng Man-ch'ing are going to hear this and not like it.
Yeah.
But that's the way I see it.
Yeah. I've heard this before. This isn't the first time I've heard this. There's all this conversation on these things, obviously. Um, there's a tough thing to do here, though. It's like you get, like, for instance, in the yoga world, because I've got a background in that. You see so many people, in Tai Chi as well, but in Tai Chi as well. You see people bringing things in and immediately trying to make it into their own thing without any real study. So that's one fault. But then the other fault is just to carbon copy and never change it. So there is this kind of middle way approach, right?
I like that way of saying it. Yes, that's absolutely correct. Yes,
Mhm.
it has to have the right balance of new, improved, and but also adhering to what you were taught and honoring that and recognizing that there may be something to what you were originally taught that you still don't understand and not just rejecting it.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, everybody's different. Their bodies are different. Like, you can't do what another person does. We're not that other person. But at the same time, respecting the lineage and how the teachings are handed down. Yeah, it's an interesting balance. And I don't know. Maybe they just had that understanding more in the East, and because of the West is new with these transmissions, it's just not quite understood still. So there's a certain uh, birthing process.
Yeah, I don't know. But for example, I know people who grew up and lived in Taiwan for many years and studied Taiji and other martial arts, and then came over here and saw the difference between the two countries. And in China or Chinese speaking countries, you don't ask the teacher a question, because if you ask a question, it implies that the teacher didn't explain it correctly. And I had that teaching physics to eighth graders, and one student said, "Dr. Chuckrow, I don't understand this. You must not be explaining it right." So I said, "Well, I'll try again. Can I try again?" And it was funny, but there's a huge difference. And he said it when he came to America and started teaching Americans. He said it was so refreshing because they asked questions, and by asking questions, it also develops you as a teacher. You now have to think about things a little differently to be able to answer that question. So there is a big difference, but still, even though we're different, I don't know if I really don't know enough about the two cultures, the differences between the two cultures to say anything. But I do know that there is a tendency to um, turn the thing into a cult, and I never liked that. I saw that at the very beginning. Um, I saw that with my when I taught physics. I would talk about something a little bit off the subject, and then I'd hear students just parroting what I said, and I would say to them, "Listen, I didn't say this because I wanted you to accept it. I was just exposing you to a certain idea that might be different from what you already have. And you shouldn't be talking about it until you come to it yourself." And this is the thing that operates. I think there's a tendency to think you understand something when you don't, and then want to teach it, want to share it, wanting to share it is good, but you have to know when you're ready to do that. But my goal at this point is to try to put as many videos on YouTube as I can. I am up to 77 videos at this point. Is it 67? 67, I think it is. And I'm trying to exhaust all of the the elements that I know that others don't seem to have been taught or have gotten yet in a way that will go out and help people to advance to the next level. Now, I don't know, I'm not, I see people who know stuff that goes so far beyond what I know. Their skill levels go so far beyond mine. But there are some things that I've worked out from my understanding of physics, um, from the kind of um, approach to problem solving that I learned when I studied physics, that have that are able to elucidate some of these concepts that are very difficult and put them in a more in a form where people, I think, can have more of a possibility of getting them. And that's my goal, to get that out while I'm still around.
Well, yeah, I appreciate it too. I saw I've been watching them and I really enjoyed them. And I like that they're like bite size, like they're like 8, 10 minutes, 12 minutes. And then, I can go and do my practice and kind of think about them instead of reading a bunch of pages. And it's nice to have a teacher's image in as too. So now I see, you're in my mind as I'm trying to work some of these things out. Um, a particular question I had, and you did do a video on this, but I'd like to ask a little bit more about it because I think it's a complicated concept that is still greatly misunderstood, not just in Tai Chi, but across different movement traditions, is the idea of song or relaxation. It seems like, yeah, there's just, people don't know what to do with this. Like lay on the floor and pass out is the idea of relaxation. And obviously in Tai Chi, that won't work. And I saw fellow students and even teachers struggle with this concept to teach it and just, in my opinion, mess it all up and mess their students all up as a result. So could you maybe shed some light on that for us?
The um, Cheng Man-ch'ing used that word more than any other word. If and answered every question in terms of the translation came back relax, which was sung. But as far as I can determine, the character for sung does not imply strength. It implies just letting go of tension. And you have a pine tree with the branches hanging down, and then you have hair above it, which has no strength. And most people, especially, may have changed over the centuries, but most Chinese people will just say song just means relax. It doesn't mean much anything more than that. But we were sort of given the idea that there's something beyond song, but that it is song, but it's something beyond just relax, which never made much sense to me. And but I found out that Yang Cheng Fu also used that word more than any other. He would say, but he wouldn't say song. He would say song, kai, song, kai, and kai. The character for that is two swinging doors with two hands, when you trace it back to its origination, two hands underneath opening the lock. And it's a character for open. And it's more than open because it might mean turn on your cell phone or initiate something, create something that is almost magical. So those two words together now have a yin yang aspect. Sung is totally yin. Yin, just letting go, letting gravity take over, having no action. But the kai means there's something very active, yang. And so that is the balance between yin yang. And it wasn't taught. It wasn't taught by Cheng Man-ch'ing, but it's in his books. He talks about it. He talks about it as, um, I'm trying to remember what kind of strength, but he talks about this kind of strength that is different from contractive muscular strength. where muscles pull bones using tendons, but it's a different kind of strength, tenacious strength, he called it, tenacity. And he described it very well. But originally, even at the very early part when I was studying Taiji, I studied with Elaine Summers, who's a dancer and a choreographer, but she had this system of healing that I studied, of movement healing. And I had very bad back, so I studied with her. And she had this thing called extension tension, which was that it wasn't muscles pulling bones, but it was opening up and out. And she taught that to me, and I learned it. And at a certain point, it sort of dawned on me that is what they're talking about, and it's called Nei Jin. Nei is inner, and the character for that is a fenced-in area with with streams coming in, or it could be a person entering in. It means once you enter in, you're inside. And Jin is strength, but the character has in it Li, which is the muscles and tendons, the idea of ordinary strength. But beyond that, there's the carpenter's square, which involves precision, training, practice. And then above that is underground water, meaning you don't see it from when you're standing above it, you don't even know it's there. And that it's almost a kind of divination to even know that it exists. So to me, that character is just amazing. That's for Jin, which is a short name for that, a translation for that would be educated strength. See, when we translate these Chinese characters into English, we're limiting them tremendously because we're defining it. Whereas the character itself is not a defined thing. It's a feeling, it's an image that's created that can be interpreted in so many different ways and is more free flowing, instead of tying it down.
Yeah, it's like poetry.
Exactly. Yes.
It
Yes.
creates a kind of visualization in the mind that you can like
Yes.
embody.
Creatively too.
Yeah.
So I found out that there are over 400 uses of the word qi.
Mm.
One of them could be expelling gas. One of them could be anger. It could be so many different things. So, there's no one definition of it.
So this is really, really interesting point that I'm always and I would want to bring up and talk about. And so we just sort of hear this idea of the mind and thoughts and concepts that, like what you're talking about now, is a more free, open, like there's a visualization happening with these characters, but like you said, it's loose and it's moving and pliable. Where when we like read a sentence or if we think in a language of just words, there is a much more fixed, rigid, and our mind kind of grasps, and what I call a kind of disembodiment happens. It just becomes just intellectual, where in Tai Chi, that's a problem. We're wanting more of the embodied kind of play with these concepts. So the language is a big thing. This seems like their language is tailored to this embodied state. And I find a lot of the Western students don't even understand embodiment at all.
Right. Well, but it's also a problem that things are so amorphous that how do you ever get it? And a lot of this is couched in culture. Some of it is even superstition. And it's very hard to get. But remember, this was taught in families to children. So when they were born, they were already seeing the adults doing it before they even learned how to speak. And that's a different way of learning. So they didn't need to have things defined the way we do when we go to a class once a week or even a few times a week. Not the same. and when we won't get it that way. So there has to be a different way for our culture and our way of learning. It's not the same as if you're born into that family where the thing was secret and you also had a responsibility to learn it, um, because that would carry on the tradition. You couldn't just go into something else whereas for example Cheng Man-ch'ing's kids, his sons, they were riding motorcycles and playing baseball and stuff like that. Um, and so how much Taiji would they have done? Or later, I think they did more. But at least they were exposed to their father, who maybe they got stuff even without having extensive training. But so we have to make up for that. So there has to be a way to take these ancient terms and this ancient understanding. It goes back thousands of years. Some of these concepts, and without losing the history of it, without losing the the and the the understanding of it that is embedded in it, to somehow be able to get it into our culture and be able to understand it. And I think that's the way all knowledge goes. Eventually, they find a better way. So, for example, Einstein, when he came up with his theory of relativity, it was said that only 9 people understood that. There were only 9 physicists who understood the theory of relativity. But now it could be even taught on the high school level, the general relativity. I'm sorry, specific, what is it, special relativity. Could teach it in an elementary college course because they found ways of reformulating it and without all of these um, complex equations, to do it in an intuitive way and to have people, maybe it's not intuitive, but at least have experiments that they can visualize with clocks and things moving, and instead of having it be uh, have it be requiring a lot of mathematics. And so it's the same thing, I think, with Taiji, that the Nei Jin, as I was talking about. I feel, see, Elaine Summers, getting back to that, she wanted me, knowing I had a background in physics, wanted me to get a PhD in physiology. So I want you to get a PhD in physiology. And I want you to then get a grant. I'll help you do it. She was great at getting grants. I'll help you get a grant. And then I want you to set up a project where you find out what's going on with extension tension, which was her thing, way of her term for what I think is Nei Jin. I couldn't do that, but I knew that this was my mission. And not only for her, but also for myself and for Taiji in general. And I feel that I've found a sort of quasi-scientific way of formulating this, that, and then some experiments that people can actually try to experience it. Because I feel it's something we do in our breathing. We do it with sphincters when we excrete, we expand. When we yawn, we're opening up the breathing apparatus. We do it with so many things. And they talk about extending the spine upward. How are you going to do that? By pulling. You have to open, you have to expand. So these are things people can feel right away. I find with my students that they get it. So this is my goal, to be able to at least get that ball moving in that direction, so that then the next person will be able to take it a little further. Maybe some scientific research, although I doubt that, because everything is for money or war.
Yeah.
it's, it's not going to be for self-development.
Well, we can maybe we can hope. We can make aspirations. So this you're calling it tension expansion?
Extension. She called it extension tension.
Extension tension. So are you this room? reminds me of the idea of a tensegrity or a biotensegrity. Are you familiar with these concepts?
I've people have talked about that, and I've tried to understand how that translates over, other than just the idea of everything opening up.
Yeah,
But the question is, how does it do that so you can feel it in your own body?
right.
And my idea is this is what I feel. And I felt it even before I got the idea that anything you do that's physical, you're sending electricity through nerves. If your nerves are severed or they don't work, you're not going to be able to do anything. And at least the motor nerves. So when I do what I call expansion, I call it expansion, muscular expansion or whatever. When I do something like that, what I feel that I'm doing is sending a lot of electricity to all of the tissues. And by doing so, I feel, and this is corroborated a little bit by some scientific studies that have been done, that electricity is affecting the water in the tissues. And remember, muscles are 70% water, and a lot of water in the muscles, and also the other tissues. And that causes that water to expand and become sort of a gel, not rigid, but more like rubbery. And that creates that kind of strength, but also some movement. Not a lot of movement, but some minor amount of movement. And I feel that is what they're talking about when they talk about Neijin. They're saying, well, the Qi does it. But they didn't know about electricity in those days. And we didn't know, it's only the mid 1700s that they started to even think about that. And, now we know how muscles work pretty much through electrical impulses. And so when you do that, you're stimulating the chi because that electricity is very, very stimulating. And, acupuncture, when they put in the needles, that's an electrical impulse because you have the metal embedded in an electrolyte that's in the tissues, and that causes an electrical current. And that's what is thought is how acupuncture, one of the elements of how acupuncture works. And so that stimulates a lot of chi. So you now feel chi. Now, the question is, what is chi? I don't know. But I think it's a matter of cause and effect. Which causes which? Does the chi cause the movement? Or does that kind of activation and movement cause a lot of chi to be felt? And it's very easy to mix that up. When you feel something, you feel, oh, the chi, oh, it's doing it. So they say, yi, chi, li, the mind, the intention. Chi, li is strength, movement.
So this is what it's meant by what Yang Cheng Fu was saying is learned strength. Like we got
Yeah,
to we got to know about this and develop the E, the mind.
yes, yes. And he talked about that first movement in the form where the hands come up, where the arms come up, and then he said, and this extension, he didn't. I don't know if he used the word extension, but this movement of the fingers outward is how you understand Neijin, the expansive strength. I call it expansive strength. And then it becomes even more as you come down. And so I make a big deal out of this beginning movement that a lot of people just come up like this and do that. But for me, I stop. And now I'm shooting my electricity into the palms of my hands and into the tips of the fingers. It's very slow. It's not like they're just going to do that, but it opens up. And as I up the electricity, it extends more and opens and opens and opens. And Yang Cheng Fu made a big deal out of that and talked about that as the way of experiencing Neijin. So that And there's so many other ways to do it too that I've come up with. Not so many, but other ways of doing it that I've come up with.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I love the history and that you've taken this time to understand the characters and all and everything. Um, so when you're doing this into the hands and the expansive strength, this let me see if I can get this question right. Where's that coming from? So a lot of times we're saying root the E in the Dantian.
So here, where it's coming from is what most people do is they pull their fingers up, which is contracting these muscles along the top
mm-hmm.
and tightening these tendons and making these fingers come up. What my way of looking at it is I'm not doing that. I'm not pulling. What I'm doing is sending that electricity through my intention, sending that electricity, there it goes. And then I'm sending it to all the tissues that are in this area. Now, you can't do that unless you're really in a state of sung. So that feeling of when they say everything comes from the dantian, you get that ball in there, that expanded ball, when everything releases down. It's like hydraulic pressure increases and lower and lower down as you release and let everything turn into liquid. As soon as you use a contractive strength, you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. So it's the same thing if, for example, I turn my head. One way is to pull my chin this way, pull, use these muscles to pull it. The other way is to open all of this. See, and when I do that, I can feel my shoulder being pushed the opposite way. It's something that people don't get it right away. It takes a while, repeated exposure, but eventually they do. Eventually they do. And the rising movements are also that. So in order to get that, as soon as you're using contractive strength, you're masking this subtle feeling that's involved. You'll never get that. So you have to, the song is absolutely essential. There's no question. It's absolutely necessary, but it's not sufficient. You have to then understand this feeling. When you get that, somebody touches your arm, they push on it, hit it. It's like, doesn't move. It doesn't move. It's out there. It's expanded. And when you're in that state and if you, let's say, use contractive strength, they push on your arm and suddenly let go and you fall. Whereas if you're in a state of Nei-Jin and everything in your body down to your feet is expanded, they push on this, they let go, your arm just goes out a little bit. It's not going to move your body. You're rooted. So Cheng Man-ch'ing talked about this relative to rooting. And he said that was the secret to rooting, that you had to have this tenacious strength. And I can explain that in terms of physics. When you tense, you're pulling. So now when the person lets go, you're still pulling, and the other end is pulling your body out. Whereas if you're pushing, the reaction to that is pushing yourself down into the floor. They let go, your arm goes out, you're still pushed into the floor. And it's when you understand a little bit of basic physics, it's simple. So to me, this agrees with physics. It agrees with a little bit of knowledge of physiology and with the physics of water, which is not well studied, but there are some people studying this. And it agrees with what I'm experiencing. And once you have a mechanism, something you can rely on, even if you know it's not perfect, and you also have a feeling associated with that, something that you can actually experience, then it goes very far. Because you can feel the progress, you can experience the progress. And whereas if it's so amorphous, you say, well, I don't think I'll ever get this. I don't. And as Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. If you say, I'm never going to get it, you never will. But if you get that glimmer, because even if the the mechanism is not the exact mechanism. You can take it further, and then you can refine it and modify it, and see that that is a better way of understanding it.
Well, that's an open. It's nice because it's an open-ended idea rather than a fixed concept of the body, and that allows for this daily learning about this thing. There's an exploration that's required, where if you just assume it's a mechanical structure and it does this and this, then
Right.
all you can do is put it in places. Now there's nothing really there. The use of the self is not on the table really.
And when I started talking about this maybe 20 years ago, putting it in books,
Mhm.
I it's more than that. I got very annoyed responses of the form, on Amazon, the comments on Amazon. Medical science knows how muscles work. They know everything about it, and it's impossible that muscles can extend.
Mm,
It's impossible. And I mentioned that to one of my teachers, and he said, well, I do things that people say are impossible every day.
yeah.
And then I show them that I can do it 3 times in a row, and they say it's impossible. Because once you get it fixed in your mind that something can't be done,
Yeah.
you're stuck. You'll never go beyond that. But it doesn't mean you have to. It's a belief system, but it
Mm,
has to be just an open mind that you will entertain the possibility and work with it and see where it goes. And that's the difference.
yeah. So much for the scientific method.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the way great science was done anyway. Well, a lot of
Right.
things that were thought to be something were changed
Right.
because people looked at, had open minds about it.
Hmm. Yeah. It's discouraging to see people use science in a way to as dogmatic. It's like you've strayed from the very method that to help develop this thing. It's the religiosity of the whole thing.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Yes.
Mm,
It's turned into a belief system, and the even though they don't know the equations and they can't prove it themselves or do an experiment to verify it,
mhm.
it's a belief system,
Yeah.
and belief is the is a bar to expanding,
Yeah.
expanding your knowledge.
Yeah. I say that all the time. People's leaving church, but they still carry the same rigidity with them into other domains. It doesn't matter what it's dressed up as. It's their own psychology. So if we're talking now this expansive strength and moving, so we haven't talked about the breath in this equation. Like, how do you put that into this?
That's a great question. Um, I've actually thought about that. When we breathe, we are
Mhm.
doing expansion. We do
Right.
it all the time. Now, the medical profession will say when you breathe, you're using contraction to do it. You're pulling the diaphragm down. But what I think it is an expansion. You're expanding the lower abdomen, and that then pulls the diaphragm down, which pulls air in. And then you release, that's natural breathing. So, what this is, when we breathe, we're not aware of how we do it. We don't think of that at all. We just breathe. But the feeling of breathing, if you really are doing it in a natural way, which a lot of people aren't because of many factors, but if you're doing, let's say you've been doing yoga or any kind of breathing exercises, and you're breathing in a natural way, you freed up your breathing system, your respiratory system, you and you really feel what you're doing. That's the same feeling, but now it's independent of breathing. So I could be breathing in, I can be breathing out, or I could be just letting my breath rest, suspending it because I don't need to breathe and still do that. But it's the same feeling. It's the same feeling. But it's active. It is active. In other words, it's not just happening. You may think your breathing is just happening, but somewhere along the line it's doing it. If you were dead, it wouldn't happen. So this is very active. As a matter of fact, when you do Taiji or Qigong with this Neijin, with this expansive strength, and you're moving, you're putting the electricity in, that doesn't come free of charge. It comes at chemical energy from your body and a lot of oxygen. So when I do that, I'm breathing a lot, but not the breathing causing that to happen. It's a result of my need, the body's need to have more oxygen. And it's tiring. You feel like you've really used a lot of energy. So it's very active. It's extremely active. It's not something that's just going to happen without having been taught it and without feeling what you're doing and having an understanding of it, is the way I see it.
Well, that's interesting that you say it's tiring because most people think, oh, I get rejuvenated when I do Tai Chi or
Well,
we
you
haven't talked.
do. It's like you're doing weightlifting, you feel rejuvenated. Or you go running, you feel
Okay,
rejuvenated.
okay.
It's using the chemical energy of your body and
Hmm.
the oxygen that's coming in through your lungs, which when you're breathing more deeply, it's going into your brain and you're getting those benefits. And when I used to run, I came back on a hot day and I took my temperature. It was 104,
Mm.
and I was feeling great. And I said to myself, I don't need to. That's why I never get sick. I don't need to get sick. I could get that fever and get all the benefits of it from just running.
Mm.
So yeah, there's a tremendous feeling of exhilaration in using whatever there is to use. But of course, we are we don't know our full potential. Most people don't.
No,
I don't think any of us do.
no. Well, that's what's so interesting about these arts is that we're moving in that direction. I think it's the journey. It's like, just the search for it is enough. So
Plus the practice. You have to practice also.
that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Practicing as search. Yes, yes.
Yeah, right. The search is great, but then you have to
The
practice.
daily practice, self-cultivation. Yeah, yeah. Um, you brought up running. So what's because I hear mixed reviews on this too. So daily exercise, or what's the view on exercise from people like Professor and stuff like this? Because I hear sometimes they're not too enthusiastic about these other endeavors. But then I hear art like I think Liang said, he ran.
Titi Leung.
Yeah, yeah, he was a big
Yeah.
runner, I hear.
Well, the way I see it is every part of the body is made to be used. And we have these muscles. We have contractive strength, which is not, we are not doing that when we do Tai Chi, but it's there for a reason. We wouldn't have it if it weren't good. So we should be doing that. So it's good to lift weights. It's good to run. Running is one of the most natural things. Swimming, all the animals running around, little children run around, and then we go to school and forget about that. And then you get old and you wish you had more muscle because you get weaker and weaker. So, no, I think it's very good to do. And I was told, don't do any of that by senior students. I asked, he said, you're just so, I was very muscle bound. He said, you're not going to get this unless you stop doing that. And I did. And the thing is, there are people I know, Don Miller, I think it is. He's a muscle man, but yet he is very high level in Taiji. And you can do both. You just have to separate it, know the difference between the two. So I can pull my fingers up like that, or I can expand them up. Why should I be stuck with only one or the other when I can do either one based on what's appropriate in the situation?
And it seems like you can be, it would be also another challenge of self-cultivation, begin to try to incorporate that style of movement into these other activities would be
That
a
too,
very
yes,
high
yes,
level. So it would just
yes.
give you another aspect to work on, because really I think at the end of the day, it's these inner principles of the Neijin that you're really working towards. Doesn't matter if you're eating, walking, opening a door, running, lifting weights, it doesn't matter. You want it with you all the time.
And when I used to run, I would be very relaxed. I would be aware of the tensions that I was creating that were not part of it. And then I would run a few laps and then find a tree and stand under the tree and just feel the chi flowing and do some qigong. And then when I was ready, I'd go back to running. I didn't feel I had to get a certain timing of how fast I went around or number of laps. That could vary from one day to another. But that was the Tai Chi training that taught me that. But we're so competitive that we and time, time is money, so you have to do things in the shortest amount of time and do it as fast as possible. It's a wrong way of treating the body.
I see people out on these jogs all looking at their watches and doing.
Yeah, right.
I'm like,
But they're on the
where's the
tread.
race? What are you doing?
They're on the stationary bike and they're reading a magazine and they have earphones in and the TV is on and they're looking to see their heart rate and how many repetitions they've done. That's not being in the moment.
No, no, that's what I mean by the disembodiment. It's almost become
Yes.
a disease. It's like a state of being. Um, so I saw you were doing with, I think, Elaine Summers, you were doing some floor work. So,
Yes.
so this reminded me of like Feldenkrais, Hannah somatics, more of the Western somatic practices. So what's your, do you have experience with some of those methods?
Well, I did a weekend workshop with Feldenkrais, but I never did his or Alexander technique or any of the Pilates. But the working, what Elaine was doing was having us lie on the floor on balls and different positions, different orientations. It was always different. She would come up with these weird names like this is the 5-ball wonder. She would call one of them, and she should have you lie on all these balls and then do little tiny movements. And the goal was to learn to move every single part of your body independently. Because she was a dancer, but it was also healing. It was also a way of healing because you're totally relaxed, so the blood can flow, and then you're doing movement using really it was expansion. And you learn the training was to move independently every vertebra of your spine, every vertebra. She had all these ways of all these exercises to learn how to do that. And she was a genius. There was no question about it. Absolute genius. And she alignment was another big thing with her, knee alignment and ankle, and she was a stickler when it came to that and understood it and taught that and changed dance because a lot of them did a lot of damage through bad alignment. And the other thing is the that I studied something called briefly, but it was thorough, was something called idiokinesis, where you learn as you do movement to visualize the bones moving, like you're watching an X-ray video of yourself. And I can do that. I can do that. That's very useful in movement to have that ability. It's not hard to get.
What, sorry, I missed it. What are you able to do?
It's called idiokinesis,
Yeah.
and it's moving as you do a movement, whatever it is, whether you're, any Tai Chi movement or dance movement, uh, you can see, if you put your mind to it, you can visualize your bones moving just like you're watching a skeleton doing that under X-ray video. And so I'm able to do that, and that has helped me too. Understanding anatomy, I feel, is very important, and physiology to a certain extent. But anatomy, you can learn that. You can certainly the bones at least, but also the muscles.
Um, so how much was anatomy stressed with your Tai Chi, like Professor Cheng? Isn't he?
Um,
Not at all, huh?
Somewhat, yeah. He talked about the thigh joints and about how keeping the feet parallel, open, put the thigh joints in a neutral position. And by the, early on, I already had a plastic skeleton that
Yeah.
I would be looking at and looking at the relationships and charts and books.
Yeah.
I went to Barnes and Noble and I got all the books that the beginning medical students would have.
Yeah.
I still have them, and I look at them, the medical dictionaries and books on anatomy and urology and
Mhm.
and the poisons, the effects of different poisons on your body
Yeah.
and hazardous materials, things like that.
Hmm. Well, what's more interesting is like it is our body, and we almost have very little education growing up in the regular school through high school. You're lucky to have an anatomy class or two. Then you have to choose to take those classes in college. This seems so crazy. It's like it should be fundamental starting in kindergarten. It's like it's your body. Like we should know about this from every year. We should be studying anatomy. It's wild that we don't.
Yeah, the way I put it is that schools, even the more progressive ones, which I taught at, if you boil it down to its beginnings, it was to get the kids off the um, the farms and train them to be able to sit on the assembly line to do repetitive tasks without having any interest in having any concern about what their bodies were going through to do that. And so you have a coffee break, you can have more coffee. It doesn't matter what that effect it has on you later. And you sit still and you learn to do repetitive tasks. And then the schools are run like assembly lines where you have to have the job done. You have to hand in the report or take the test or know something at a certain time. Everyone has to do it at the same time because that's the assembly line. If one person gets it late, it'll be a lemon or hold up the assembly line. So that's what were, and it still exists in our school systems, more in some than others.
Yeah, I agree. And you see this, I think that's the reason people are disembodied. It's like who wants to be in the body because it's an awful experience. It's a traumatic life, actually. Um, yeah, I agree. So your example of the person running on the treadmill with the headphones and it's like to anything to be distracted from the present moment, but that was learned rather than like you said, growing up in China with these masters. It's like as you're living a more embodied existence. So we do have a massive gap in order to get this knowledge. We have fundamental issues that aren't necessarily your fault, but you were raised in a society that this is not conducive to your way you've normally taken in information. I that's why I love when I saw your work. I was like, more people doing this work to build that bridge is like it's not going to happen without people like you doing this work.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
saying that. Yeah.
Well, it's true. It's when I saw your page, I really like. I just look for people like you to talk to, and the fact that you studied with Professor Chang, and you, yeah, I think it's all you already said it in the interview. It's just amazing this information you're able to share and your body of work.
Yeah. And Professor Cheng was amazing. I remember at the beginning, I was very stiff. He came over to me and he said, touch my, of course, this is all through an interpreter, touch my shoulder. I just touched his shoulder and suddenly I was flying. And then he said, just to make sure that I knew it wasn't an accident, he said, do it again, touch my shoulder. And again, the same thing happened to me. That opened me up. I knew there's something here that goes way beyond anything I can explain. And it was just a light touch. I didn't, nothing big. It was just suddenly I was flying.
And what do you attribute that to? What is it?
I attributed it to the perfect timing that he had, the
Mm,
fact that he knew everything about me
mm.
physically and was connected to me in a way that just the right time, the right amount, the right direction, just a little tiny thing, and I was flying. He had everything in my body.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time today.
Oh, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. I love the questions you asked and the additions interpretations that you elucidated. This was very good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was an honor. Thank you so much. Yeah, and hopefully we can do this again in the future. So I'll keep watching
Absolutely.
your videos, and we'll do it again. All right.
Thank you.
Bye, Robert.
Bye bye.